And so this week we are talking about algorithmic injustice or algorithmic oppression. And share my screen here. I show me. Oh, nope. Hide meeting. Okay. When I do this, can you guys see the panel of us on the side of the screen? Okay, cool. Recent. There we go. All right. So this is a really, really contemporary issue, and I've had a lot of students, especially in my asynchronous course, who are using AI to sort of generate their discussion posts and some of their shorter papers, and it's been really problematic. First of all, AI cannot yet do your thinking for you. When it comes to philosophy, it has trouble formulating opinions, it has trouble detecting contradictions in information, it has trouble recognizing the evolution of an idea over the course of an author's work. And because AI is trained on human information, it makes the AI a replicator of human problems. So that's sort of the foundation of algorithmic justice. So what is algorithmic injustice? Also known as algorithmic oppression. It amplifies the injustices that are commonly faced by marginalized communities. The reliance on that biased data in training algorithms or artificial intelligences, it leads to social harms and the perpetuation of these white supremacist patriarchal ideals. And we're going to watch this first video from Sofiya Umoja Noble. This is from 2014. So this is 10 years ago, and it highlights the extremity of the issue at that time. And following this video, we're going to kind of do an experiment to look at how that has changed over time. So we will do this one. Did I share my screen with the ability for sound? Hold on one second. I think I hit the wrong button when I did this. There we go. All right.
Everyone said I'd have to pay extra to earn IT certifications. Everyone except WGU. There, I earned.
I took two things that I love, dancing and dogs, and I made them into a successful business.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really? First up, we've got Shake video masks. You can use different...
Sorry, y'all. It seems like
they said it would be too hard to earn a degree while working full-time, but WGU offers flexible degree.
Dang it. How do I get that little sidebar back? That's not it. Do y'all know how to use Zoom? Show video? Yeah. All right, cool. So I really like Noble's lecture here because she doesn't only discuss the social harms that come from search engine skewed results or the bias that's being programmed into AI and algorithms. She also discusses the physicality of algorithms of oppression and how the coltan mining in the DRC is physically harmful and obviously impacts communities that are completely out of sight and out of mind for most Americans. In Neptune Frost that we'll watch at the end of the semester, Saul Williams uses this tagline both in the film and on his Martyr Loser King album that coltan is cotton. And what we are witnessing is modern slavery. We've just outsourced it to another country instead of bringing our slaves directly here. Hold on one second. My dog wants to go out. All right. So it's important to note that there have been a whole lot of improvements that have been made to search results as far as diversity of images. But alongside that progress, we have seen a substantial rise in AI filters and AI generated images. So I'm curious what you guys think about the ethical outcomes of that. Do you think the problem has changed in nature over the last 10 years? Do you think that the difference in the issue has ultimately limited the amount of progress and harm reduction that improvements in diversity has achieved? What are your thoughts?
I think the since AI is based out of the same data pool as our search engines, and it's also based on like likelihood of engagement. Um, they fall under the same issue and the same cause, but we probably need to approach it from a different way, just because AI is generative rather than like rank based searching with advertisement money also changing how much something shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, and your entire online history also changes what you're being presented with, because it doesn't seem to matter what part of the internet you're looking at anymore. It's always generated in the interest of keeping you online, of keeping your attention. So we see that through whitewashing of search results, so that even the diverse images that we're seeing are AI filtered, or models are chosen for more European features. Um, we see it especially in ageism, you know, even with the increased diversity of images that we're getting in search results, they're all young, they're all beautiful, they're all of a certain position within our society. It seems to be really, really geared towards younger people, which in itself is sort of a practice of ageism, because it reduces the voice and presence of our older generations, which is creating an even wider generation gap than we've probably ever seen before. Um, and do you guys think that Noble's sort of Imagine engine is a realistic solution? I personally don't think that forcing people to self-identify their own biases would be productive. Um, and the implicit bias activity that you guys will do this week will sort of help you understand that, like, we are not aware of our own biases. We can try to be, but that's why they're biases. The implicit biases are things that we've unconsciously picked up throughout our lives. Um, so yeah, what do you think of the Imagine engine? Is there a way to maybe alter Noble's idea that would make it more effective?
I think we could employ her idea and it would be effective, but the there would be certain bars to getting that put together. There are definitely powers and parties who are against such development.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about the tendency for people to enjoy their little echo chambers. And if you are fully enabled to filter all of your online content through your own desires and beliefs, that it 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 only further alienates those communities. Um, so yeah, I do have some concerns there. Luckily, over the last 10 years, I haven't seen it implemented anywhere. I do think it's an interesting idea to put the onus of like self accountability onto people in their online participation. But I think that there's got to be a more productive way to go about that. Noble also uses really, really powerful language throughout her video. She characterized posts from the Westboro Baptist Church as sort of being an assault. Do you guys agree with that language?
I think like yeah, I believe it's appropriate, but and it's also like really common because anybody can put anything on the internet. And the less, it's not necessarily less, the more and more that people do, more things get lost. So it's harder for things to get taken down, but everything is still there, and it's just overcrowding the internet. So there's just so much that you can't escape. And it turns into assault because people who do have these groups, they have that freedom to do that, so they can release whatever they want towards whoever.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the commonality of that kind of content is really rooted in engagement baiting, or rage baiting. Algorithms will push that sort of content because it elicits an emotional response from the viewer and encourages that person to stay engaged. Not even necessarily with the Westboro content, but they're gonna, take to Facebook and be like, you won't believe what Westboro Baptist Church said. I think this way about it. And so it just generates more of a conversation and more of an online presence from people. So I want to also give some consideration to how algorithmic oppression embodies the features of Black invisibility that we discussed in Paul C. Taylor's No Negroes in Connecticut. Just like issues of plurality, personhood, perspectives, and presence, which I think are fairly self-evident just from search results and how that affects people and disenfranchises or dehumanizes certain facets of our population. But I think in terms of the broader ocular centrism, like I said before, many of the images that we see now are whitewashed. Models are chosen based on more acceptable features. Filters are applied to feed that Eurocentric standard of beauty. And these things inform our understanding of American culture. So, sort of beyond sexism and racism, like I said, that it's generating an implicit bias against dynamic body types, against older ages. And what happens in the long run of being fed images of the world through this sort of filter is that we as a culture who relies so heavily on appearances and images, I think it's reasonable to draw a causal link between this sort of coded bias and the rising rates of youth depression and suicidality and senses of being unable to live up to the expectations of such a visual culture. Do you guys think that's a fair assessment? Is it clear to you guys the significance of the themes that Taylor wrote about in this example of oppressive technologies? Okay. So just as a little search exercise, I think all of these screenshots are from me in an incognito browser. And then I went and searched while logged in under my Google account, and I got mildly different results. Some of the images were still the same, but they had moved up or down in significance. I will say from my years and years and years of education and research, Google at this point pretty well knows that I'm an ecofeminist. And at this point, I'm not even sure if it can tell if I'm white or black, uh, which is interesting because it definitely affects my search results. But in the incognito browser, you can see a search for something like professional hair, which is a neutral search term. You get dominantly whitewashed with 2 prominently Black models and then some, you know, peppered in. And I don't necessarily see these images as like horribly problematic compared to what Noble discussed in her video. I think that there has been a lot of progress made over the last 10 years. But then you get to unprofessional hair, and there's substantially more Black images on this search result. Beautiful. It's still very geared towards women. I do have one little nature pic in there. It seems like it's AI generated women, AI filtered women, all of lighter skin, except for Lupita Nyong'o, one Black man, two Black men. So we're getting more men, more mildly diverse women, and one little picture of nature. So beautiful is still skewed in an anthropocentric way. Beauty is assumed to be referring to people rather than a broad concept. Healthy skin. That is a whole lot of white bodies. We do have one lighter skinned Black woman and one looks like person of Asian descent. So that's still very, very concerning. It's also curious to note that all of these search results for images are trying to sell you something. Every single one of them. And if we go back, hairstyles also is trying to feed certain expectations of your job or whatnot, but particularly the healthy skin. Every single one of these is trying to sell you something. So we have one more video. This one is a little bit shorter. Dr. Joy is the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League, and I really, really appreciated this video in particular because she discusses the coded gaze, which is obviously put in the same philosophical realm as the whitely gaze, the male gaze. And I'm going to open this one in YouTube and see if we get ad-free.
Hello. How I started addressing algorithmic bias. So So you'll see here.
Yeah, the video's not playing on our end.
Uh-oh. That's weird.
Hello. My name is Joy Buolamwini. I am a poet of code, and I tell stories that make daughters of diasporas dream.
Are we good?
Yeah, it's working for me.
And sons of privilege pause. But I'm also a computer scientist, and today I'm going to share with you how I started addressing issues to do with algorithmic bias. So in my first slide, you'll see a term that I call the coded gaze. And the coded gaze, like the white gaze or the male gaze or the post-colonial gaze, is a reflection of the priorities, preferences, and at times prejudices of those who have the power to shape technology. And I first really started thinking about this as I was working on an art installation, and something didn't quite go according to plan, as you'll see in this demonstration. So you'll see here, I have my lighter skinned friend's face, no problem. I try to get detected. I need a little assistance, right? And so this experience of coding in a white mask is what led me to start questioning facial analysis and recognition systems and more broadly artificial intelligence. So I shared this experience with the TED audience, got over 1 million views, and I thought somebody might want to check my claims. So let me check myself, and I ran my TED profile image through AI systems from a range of companies. Some didn't detect my face at all, and the ones who did labeled me male. I'm a phenomenal woman. I am not a man. So that was not the ground truth. And so, as annoying as this was, being detected by technology that can be used for mass surveillance is not always what you actually want. And so as I learned in the US that 1 in 2 adults, over 130 million people, has their face and facial recognition networks, I got concerned when I learned that these systems can be deployed unwarranted with systems that haven't even been checked for accuracy. So what happens when you're misidentified as a criminal suspect? And in the UK, where performance metrics are being recorded, the numbers don't look so great. You have false positive match rates over 90%, more than 2,400 innocent people being matched with criminal suspects, and you even have 2 women who were falsely matched with men. So my earlier example has real-world implications. And as we talk about the future of work and how AI will replace jobs of the future, we cannot forget that AI is now serving as the gatekeeper for current jobs. So here's a company called HireVue, and they also use facial analysis technology. And they say, give us a video of a face, and we can pick up verbal and nonverbal cues to tell you things like emotional engagement and problem-solving style. And here's the kicker. We train on the current top performers of our company. For me, when I heard this, I was thinking, do they know they could be in violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which says you can't discriminate on the basis of gender or color when it comes to the workplace and employment? And we're not just talking about using computer vision or facial analysis technology. We really have to think about all of the areas in which AI is currently being used. So this includes hiring, but also college admissions. And we know that can be biased, as well as access to financial services. And even when we're thinking about things like predictive policing, who has access to freedom. And so because of the widespread use of AI for my MIT thesis, I decided to investigate the accuracy of facial analysis systems when it came to guessing the gender of a face. But before I could even begin, I ran into a problem. Many of the benchmarks that are used to say how well we're doing with facial analysis tasks like detection or gender classification are themselves skewed. So here you're seeing metrics from a benchmark from the National Institute for Standards and Technology. It's 75% male, 80% lighter skinned individuals. So for me, these pale male benchmarks are really destined to fail the rest of society if we don't address them. And the question is, how did it come to this? How did we end up with such skewed benchmarks? And this is something I call power shadows. So essentially, if we're not intentional about being inclusive, what we'll do is we will reinforce existing inequalities. So if you look at the way that benchmark was derived, they use public figures. So now let's think about who's represented in the public. Let's look at the representation with parliamentarian members. You're at 77%. So it's not so surprising then that the patriarchy becomes a power shadow on these data sets. Similarly, which images are going to be most accessible? Which media representation are we going to see? You're going to see more lighter skinned individuals. So as we're thinking about our AI presence and future, we need to make sure we're addressing these power shadows. And so I created a new benchmark that was more inclusive when it came to gender parity and also when it came to skin type distribution. So I could finally get to my research question. How accurate are IBM, Microsoft, and Face++, a billion-dollar tech company in China, when it comes to guessing the gender of a face. And if you look at the accurate measurements, it seems okay if you look at the aggregate accuracy. 88%, not so great, but not horrible. 94%, 90%, maybe you get a B depending on the grading scale. But now let's look at gender. And when we break it down by gender, we see that all systems work better on male faces than female faces in our data set. And when we look at skin type, we're seeing that all of the systems in aggregate work better on lighter skin than darker skin. Then we took it a step further and we broke it down by intersection. So not just looking at gender, but also looking at skin type. And skin type instead of race, because I could be black, Mariah Carey is black, we're on a different spectrum when it comes to the actual shade. So this is why we looked at skin type in particular. And what we see here with the intersectional breakdown, there's perfect performance for one group, the pale males, flawless performance. 98% for lighter females, 94% for darker males, and then we're at closer to 80% when it comes to darker females. These were the good results. Let's look at Face++. China's supposed to have the data advantage, but the type of data you have really matters. And also you see here why it's important that you do an intersectional analysis, because here we're seeing that's actually darker males that have the better performance, lighter females at 94%. And now we've dropped to 65% accuracy, commercially sold product. IBM. Again, we're seeing their differences, right? If you're comparing darker males or lighter females, again, why an intersectional analysis is important, because different companies will perform in various ways. And if we break it even further and we split it by the actual skin type, we get error rates that get close to a coin toss. We're talking binary classification. You have a 50-50 shot because we reduced gender to a binary. And here we're getting accuracy, error rates around 47% for the highly melanated. So I thought companies might want to know, and I shared the results with the companies I audited. And IBM was the most responsive company in terms of getting back to us quickly. Microsoft did as well a bit later. And what we found is on the day we released our research, IBM also released a new product. And as you can see here, it was much improved. So this was the gender shade study, and I want to talk about three main takeaways. The first is intersectionality matters. We can fool ourselves into a false sense of progress if we're only looking at aggregate data. And also, even if we do single axis analysis, okay, we got the gender thing, oh, we got the skin type thing, but did you do the intersection? You might find something out. Also, we're fooling ourselves by having supremely white data sets that exclude a group I like to call the undersampled majority. So oftentimes I'm reading about minority, marginalized groups, and I'm like, women and people of color? Last I checked, that's most of the world, right? And another takeaway, change is a matter of priority. I can't tell you how many people saw my TED Talk and they're like, yeah, but you know, you dark skinned, like that's why you weren't being picked up. The laws of physics, there's only so much that they can do. The laws of physics did not change between December 2017 when I sent IBM the results and February 2018 when they did the update. What changed is they made it a priority. And so after gender shades came out, there was a lot of media coverage, over 230 articles in more than 37 countries. We did a follow-up. We wanted to see not only how did our target companies from the first study do a year later, but we wanted to include non-target companies as well. So we brought in Amazon, since they were selling to law enforcement and are being trialed by the FBI. And we also included Kairos, whose founder had been talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and he was the Black CEO of the company at the time. So let's see what happens a year later. We see that for all of the target companies, there are improvements. And for the non-target companies for our 2018 tests, they were a bit closer to the 2017 results of their peers. And here we see that in our follow-up, all target companies reduced the gender gap substantially. But when it came to non-target companies, again, we're where the others were a year before. Similarly, skin type, we're seeing reductions with the target companies. When it comes to the non-target companies, not so much. And then when we do the intersectional analysis, flawless performance for yet another group, the pale males again. And what are we seeing with darker females? Again, closer to the peers a year ago. And so here I call out Amazon in particular because they had the worst performance overall in our 2018 August audit. And you can see how Microsoft compares to Amazon. And here you can see Face++, again, billion-dollar tech company in China. They're making these gaps and they're closing them as well. And then finally, we can look at the comparison to IBM. So our approach of releasing the information to the companies beforehand and giving them a chance to respond seemed to be better than the second option, which was we'll do the audit and then we'll share it publicly. So after we shared our research, Amazon attempted to discredit it. However, you had a year of replication from other tech companies as well as academics. Now, even if companies improve their systems and you have accurate AI, it can still be abused. Here's a story that came out from The Intercept showing that IBM had equipped the New York Police Department with video analytics that could search for people by their skin color, but also their facial hair, the color of clothing that they were wearing. So we really have to think not just about accuracy, but the potential for abuse. And this is why I launched the Safe Face Pledge last year in December to say, what would it look like to create a world with more ethical and responsible facial analysis technology, where we show value for human life and dignity, where we address bias continuously, where we facilitate transparency, and most importantly, actually embed this in our business practices, in our contracts, in our terms of services. And I'm excited that 3 companies have come on board. And it's not just companies saying we're going to develop in a more ethical and inclusive way. We also have other companies that are saying we'll only purchase from safe face companies. So all of us can be part of shifting the narrative of AI so we can bend towards more inclusion and we can bend towards justice. Thank you.
So she brings up a lot of really good points, and I think it's important to note, I also did my search engine experiment between Microsoft Bing and Google Images. So the thumbnails that you saw were from Google. When I did it on Microsoft Bing, I don't have as broad of a search history on that search engine, and the results were much, much worse, noticeably more skewed against marginalized communities, especially on the unprofessional hairstyle one. So Dr. Joy's lecture leads us into the implications of predictive policing, which include racial profiling, mass incarceration, surveillance, and the criminalization of poverty. Racial profiling is when communities of color are disproportionately flagged by predictive policing algorithms, which leads to excessive stop searches and arrests. This has been documented in cities like Chicago. Mass incarceration is the over-policing of Black and Brown communities, leads to more arrest convictions and incarcerations, which in turn feeds the US prison industrial complex. I like the notes here. They say a system with roots in slavery and racial control. I don't think it's just roots. I think it is a system of slavery and racial control and poverty control as well, especially as we're seeing more and more places criminalize homelessness and not just poverty. In terms of surveillance, algorithmic systems often lead to increased surveillance of BIPOC communities. That surveillance extends beyond physical policing and includes digital spaces like social media. and it uses predictive tools to monitor posts and activity, which will also disproportionately criminalize people of color. It's important to note, too, that our economy is moving toward a surveillance-based economy. So if you look at somewhere like China, which is currently rolling out a system of social credit, which affects your ability to participate in certain spaces, America is doing that too. We just are more covert about it, and people have less control over their own social credit score because of their ignorance of it. And if you want more information on that, Dr. Joy has a documentary on Netflix called Coded Bias, and it is a little bit of an elementary sort of introduction to these concepts, but it is a really good foot in the door for introducing yourself to these ideas and determining the ways in which you can get to deeper areas of research on it if you're interested. And then the criminalization of poverty. Algorithms often link poverty with criminality, especially when it comes to being unhoused, as being unhoused comes with a slew of other, be it mental health issues, be it addiction, or whatever the case may be. So this disproportionately targets low-income neighborhoods where people of color are at a higher density, and it reinforces systemic inequities in housing and employment. And then at the end of class, I'll include some extra recommended resources. So in class next time, we'll be looking at more specifically feminist perspectives on algorithmic oppression. You have 3 readings. 1 is a web link, 2 are PDFs. Total, they're only about 18 pages. It shouldn't take you very long. And stop sharing. There we go. And then I want to share some links with you guys before we go. I don't know if I can send them all at once. I think it's really interesting that Teen Vogue has become like a legitimate resource. So Tay is a chatbot. It learned from its interactions with people, and it was taken offline within hours because people were feeding it horrendous information about the world, and it started to mimic white supremacist ideologies, and they were like, oh, whoops, can't do that. Didn't have any safety features to block against hate speech or anything like that. So it's important to note that like humans differ in the ways that they interact with technology, but it's like that robot that was supposed to cross the country that kept getting knocked over and beaten. And it's almost like humans, when they feel that anonymity and freedom from consequences, will use that opportunity to like take out whatever aggression or hatred it is that they have inside them, which I think is a feature reinforced by social media, where despite having your name attached to your profile, you still feel that isolation from an issue and the ability to participate with anonymity, which is why certain spaces have tried to implement some sort of censorship. Anyway, the link about predictive policing is really good because it goes into the specifics of how these algorithms are trained and why using the entire history of the police department to create predictive policing is continuing the issue of the historic targeting of brown and Black communities. That next link talks about the predictive policing and how it's being used at the southern border. And then Teen Vogue actually did a really great piece on how algorithms replicate white supremacy and injustice. And yeah, I think it's amazing that Teen Vogue is reaching young audiences with these really significant topics. Because when I was a teen, they definitely did not do that. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Do you have any thoughts you want to share on this issue before we go? Was everybody aware of these problems? Yeah, it's pretty new territory. So you guys have short writing assignment 2 due tonight. If you do need an extension or help with it, please email me before the deadline. And then just as a reminder for my own peace of mind, early voting started yesterday. If you want to avoid the lines, I highly recommend visiting Faulkner Library on Terry. They do early voting. I'll be voting in Little Rock today. So you guys explored all the issues with me this semester. I hope you feel informed to make decisions that you believe in. Go do it, y'all. Have a great day.